Calorie counting is one of the most popular weight loss methods, but it works for some people it doesn't, and it does harm for certain groups of people. In this video, I will break down the most common mistakes during calorie counting and explain when this method might do more harm than good. My name is Olga Onoschenko. I'm a psychotherapist, nutritionist, and I've got a PhD from the University of Sheffield, and this is a channel about psychological and physiological aspects of weight management. Calorie deficit is a principle. So we need to eat less than we burn in order to lose weight. This is a principle. We will not burn fat without calorie deficit. That's for sure. How we achieve calorie deficit, whether it is through calorie counting, more intuitive approaches, not intuitive eating, intuitive approaches, which may encompass a lot of different things. Whether it is through avoiding certain foods or even managing your stress, these are all methods that we can achieve calorie deficit with. And what works for one person may be completely unsuitable for another. What are the benefits of the method? First of all, it's accuracy and predictability. You can know exactly how much you weigh by certain date. It's especially important for athletes which need to make weight, for example, boxers. For general population, it's not important. Even if you have booked a holiday for which you will need to fit into bikini. Do not try to put pressure on yourself in order to look a certain way. This is the road to nowhere, to actually poor mental health. But let's continue with benefits of calorie counting. It's increased awareness. We know better which products are more calorific and less calorific, and we can also take into account how filling they are. So for example, when you count calories, you will learn that nuts are 600-700 calories per 100 grams. But you may notice that when you snack with nuts, you are fuller for longer. So in spite of high calorie density, nuts are very filling and you get compensatory effect. And when you learn this about different foods, you can make more informed decisions in your favor. Educational effect. When you also pay attention at how much protein, fat, carbs, fiber there are in the product. Again, you can make better choices, better decisions. And flexibility. You know that you can fit in treats into your calorie goal and still lose weight. For this, I really love the case of Zoe Lee, a famous fitness influencer. She wrote up an article about her preparation for fitness bikini competitions. She ate one Snickers bar a day all the way through, and she lost enough fat and she won in her category. And what she said, that this wasn't a big problem to have one Snickers bar a day. The only problem is that Snickers bar is around 250 calories, and if she had other food, more filling, more nutritious food, she would be less hungry in this calorie deficit. Another example is McDonald's ice cream, 200 calories. We may be afraid of it when we are on diet, when we want to lose weight, because this is an ice cream. You don't eat ice cream when you want to lose weight, right? But it's only 200 calories. So you can fit it into your calorie goals easily, and get a lot of pleasure. That's another thing that you can notice. How many calories and how much pleasure the product gives you. Some foods are very calorific, not very filling, and are actually not really pleasurable. For me, these are deep fried things, such as tempura or falafel. I really don't like greasy stuff. Now, let's move on to common calorie counting mistakes. Why it may go wrong for you. First of all, calculation inaccuracies. We may calculate our deficit in the wrong way. A lot of things that can go wrong. Your basal metabolic rate may be not as you calculated. Your non-exercise activity thermogenesis may be not as you calculated. Your activity levels may be not as high as you calculated. And this does not mean that you're incompetent or your nutritionist is incompetent. It's normal that formula will not always give you exact prediction. Even Apple Watch, even Fitbit, which are quite accurate at the moment at calculating your energy expenditures, may be lying to some people, because some people can have naturally lower metabolism than it could be predicted. Therefore, how I work with my clients, we track for minimum 2 weeks. And if it is a woman with a period, with big weight fluctuations across the period, we track for 6 weeks. So with given calorie consumption and with given calorie expenditure, we can track how much weight a person loses or gains, and from there we can adjust calorie consumption, so cut down on certain foods, for example, reorganize nutrition, or increase energy expenditure in order to achieve calorie deficit. So we rely not on calculations, although first I do predict by calculating it as precisely as I can, but we rely on actually live data, what's going on a certain menu with a certain amount of activity, daily steps, weekly exercise, and so on. From there we adjust. There is a lot of incorrect data in apps. MyFitnessPal has a ridiculously high amount of errors in its database. What works better now is artificial intelligence. It works even better than an average mediocre nutritionist. Of course, it will never substitute good nutritionist, but easily substitute mediocre nutritionist. My pet peeve is activity coefficients. As you know, maybe that we first calculate, when we try to calculate your deficit, we first calculate your basal metabolic rate, then we multiply it by activity coefficient, how active you are. For example, if you're very active, we will multiply metabolic rate by 1.7. This will give us approximate prediction of how much calories you burn per day, taking into account your activity levels. But it's so vague, the description of these coefficients is so vague. I prefer either relying on your Fitbit or Apple Watch or calculating manually calories you burn through activity. I normally ask people how many steps they make on average per day and what's their exercise timetable. And then depending on intensity of exercise, I can predict how much calories they burn during the exercise. This was a very long explanation of first mistake, inaccuracy. Second mistake is demonizing calorific foods. So the person starts counting calories. We see that nuts are high in calories. We start avoiding nuts. We see that avocado is 240 calories. We start avoiding avocado. We do not take into consideration that these foods are very satiating. They have really good compensatory effect. What is compensatory effect? When you eat something at dinner and if it is satiating and it has high compensatory effect, then if we eat something for lunch, and this is very satiating and has a very good compensatory effect, then for dinner we will be less hungry and will naturally want less food. Of course, Snickers or any sugary dessert-like things will not have high compensatory effect, but nutritious, high fiber, healthy fat foods will have this effect. It will be different for everyone, so find which foods work for you and which foods do not work for you. And the fact that the food is high calorie density doesn't mean you need to exclude it. Sometimes we do need certain calorie density in our meal in order to achieve satiety. Third problem is excessive rigidity. We do not give ourselves space to make a mistake. We start worrying as soon as we overdo our calories by 100, and most common mistake is trying to stick to the same amount of calories every day. So for example, I calculated for myself that I need to eat 1600 calories and I want to eat it every single day, 1600 calories. But my stress levels are different, my quality of sleep is different, my activity levels are different. So I will be more or less hungry every day. So it will be more intuitive, more sustainable to also take into consideration your state, mental and physical state. And on some days you will need more calories. You will want to eat more than 1600. You will need more than 1600. And on some days you will not be that bothered, you will not be that hungry, and may want to eat less. And anything can go wrong anytime. Some days can be just bad and you may overeat and get into surplus, calorie surplus. But do not let it turn into binging. Do not take all or nothing approach. It's okay to overdo it by 200, 400 calories sometimes. What matters is a big picture. What's going on for months? So do not ignore natural fluctuations in appetite and your body needs. Next, when calorie counting can be harmful, it's especially harmful for perfectionists. Perfectionism is not only a desire to do everything perfectly. It's also setting up unrealistically high standards, demanding from yourself meeting these standards. And if you're not meeting these standards, beating yourself up. Always check your goals and demands from yourself. Check, are they realistic? Is it realistic to eat every day, to stay every day in a deficit of 500 calories? It may seem realistic for 2 months, but I remind you that there can be bad days. Some days you will be hungrier. Some days you will be underslept. Some days you will be stressed. You need to give yourself room for error. You need to set realistic goals. What are the warning signs? What are the symptoms of being a perfectionist when it comes to calorie counting? It's panic when exceeding calorie targets. I wrote them down. Feeling like a failure over minor violations, ignoring body signals for the sake of numbers, disconnecting from natural hunger and satiety cues. So I will stick to this calorie goal no matter what. And if I don't, I will beat myself up. That's the most problematic behavior. This is the most problematic and the most popular behavior that we can expect when a perfectionist starts counting calories, tracking calories. Then there are cyclical problems. What's the normal cycle of the normal vicious circle of calorie tracking? I decide to lose weight, I start tracking calories, I track calories, I lose weight, then I get fed up counting calories, start eating chaotically, regain weight, and start tracking calories again. What's the problem here? The problem is if this causes negative emotions, distress. It may cause distress when you track calories and are very rigid about it, feel a lot of pressure on yourself, and it can cause distress when you eat chaotically and are gaining weight. That's not pleasant at all, right? Sort of losing control. The problem here is most probably in your inability to eat to have flexible structure in your eating and not being able to self-regulate without food. So chaotical eating means there are problems with self-regulation. What is self-regulation? It's the ability to control your behavior through managing your emotions. And it's a skill. If you do not have it, some people naturally have it because they were brought up in a certain way and have certain nervous system. Some people do not naturally have it, but this can be learned. So please book your consultation with me if you want to learn to control your behavior, especially eating behavior. This can be developed. Healthy eating behavior, controlled eating can be developed. And also there are psychological consequences of all that, of being rigid, being perfectionist about your calorie tracking. It causes anxiety, constant anxiety, food obsession, deterioration of other life areas So you're so focused on your calorie tracking that other areas of life may suffer. For example, social connection. You avoid gatherings around food because you're super anxious about overeating. And then irritability and emotional instability. What are the alternative approaches that I offer? First, you can try and count retrospectively. If you still want to track, if you want still to see a better picture of what's going on in your nutrition, count retrospectively. First, eat, write down what you eat, and then in the end of the day, see how many calories you had, how much protein, fats, and carbs and fiber each food contained. So that you are not led by numbers, you are led by your intuition, and then you assess where your intuition leads you, and then try to adjust next day and see what happens. Focus on satiety. Notice what foods give you more satiety and more pleasure at lower calories. Practice living in maintenance, because living in deficit will be very different to your existence in maintenance. In deficit, it's uncomfortable. Calorie deficit isn't comfortable. Your body will signal you, we are in energy deficit, let's do something about it. A good nutritionist will not only help you lose weight, but also will teach you to live maintaining this weight, how to live comfortably and not gain weight. And this also takes time, it takes trial and error, it takes adjustments, because you cannot live in deficit all the time, right? And regaining weight is one of the biggest problems of dieters, right? Once they're not on diet, once they do not track calories, they regain. And these can be avoided. You can learn to live comfortably. I don't say without any limits. I don't say without any restrictions. More or less comfortably and calmly, without stress about food, and maintain weight. And fourth alternative approach, develop self-regulation. Very often people start counting calories because they need certain external limit on eating. Without this limit, they cannot control their food intake. In ideal world, how do we eat? We eat balanced meals. We eat when we are hungry. We stop eating when we are full, not overly full. Even if we eat a cake, we will be less hungry later and will eat less pasta, naturally. This is perfectly healthy eating. But many people would eat under stress, will eat emotionally to suppress their emotions, to avoid their emotions, or to help cope with emotions. And this is where it's better not to try and limit this eating by calorie counting, but it's better to learn how to self-regulate or how to change the life context in a way that helps you to be less hungry emotionally. And this is where we work with self-actualization, relationships with self, relationships with others, procrastinations, and so many other psychological questions. To conclude, the key to success is a calm psychological state. And even when we are dysregulated, when we go emotionally out of balance, and this will happen every day, we know how to calm ourselves down without food, how to process emotions without food, how to come back to calm, nice emotional state without food. I don't say that food should not be used to soothe, to self-soothe. It can be a good instrument to self-soothe. It can be adaptive instrument. It can be adaptive behavior to eat something to calm down. But if this doesn't lead to weight gain, and if this is not your only coping strategy, and if you know how to self-regulate, and if food is not your only coping mechanism, then it doesn't matter which method you choose, whether it's calorie tracking, macro tracking, intermittent fasting, limiting certain food groups, and so on and so on and so on. Healthy psychological place from where you're coming from is much more important than the method you choose to get into calorie deficit. And when you're constantly, if your nervous system is often hyperactive, if you are under chronic stress, or if you're a perfectionist, every extra 100 calories will make you anxious and will trigger a desire to eat more. And very often this is something sweet. And remember, the method should serve you, not enslave you. If calorie counting takes too much attention and increases food preoccupation, it's time to change your strategy. It doesn't mean you need to give up on your health and fitness goals, but you need to find other ways rather than constantly trying to fit into your calorie goal. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please write down in comments. Find useful links under this video. I will be happy to work with you to help you learn self-regulation and improve your relationships with food, body and self. And you also can join my Instagram, where I show how I eat and exercise from a position of self-care. See you soon.